Welcome to the NFL Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by TheLions.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast. We've got NFL player props here for you in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs as we roll along. Had a pretty good week last week in the wild card. Nate definitely helped us get over 500. I was at 500, but we had some pretty good looks there over the weekend, and we're looking to keep it going here in the playoffs. So definitely want to make sure to subscribe to that page. We're going to be coming back to you each and every round the rest of the way here for this NFL postseason. Also got the NBA stuff going every single weekday as well. So if you are following along, you'll get all the player props and the best bets that we have for you guys. So let's jump right into what you've got here for the first bet of the day, Nate, and talk about the greatest quarterback of all time.
Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, so he's going to be running. Over 4.5 rush attempts is the pick here. I also like 3.5 rushing yards in the first quarter, which, it's kind of a dart throw because it is just one quarter, but the cap here, first of all, thematically, I was like, damn, in that wild card round, we should have been taking all the quarterback rushing props. That is the biggest difference. In how the NFL is played right now is if you're not a dual threat, there's two non-dual threats playing still, Goff and Stafford, and they're kind of propped up by their team. You have to be a dual threat. You have to understand that the difference in positive plays between taking a sack and getting up the middle for 2 yards is huge. So those still count as rushing attempts. Mahomes has been doing this for years now, running much more in the playoffs, despite having a bum ankle a lot. He went for 5 for 33 on a bum ankle against Houston in week 16. And now he's probably had enough rest time to elevate that thing, get it completely right as we enter the playoffs. You look at his last 3 years in the playoffs, excluding wildcard games, because those are sometimes cupcakes. Not saying Houston is far from a cupcake, but they do have a really good defensive line. Last 3 non-wildcard games, 5.5 carries per game over this, at least 5 carries basically, and 6 of 8, including 4 straight, as the Chiefs' offensive line has gotten worse and as they've played more dangerous defensive lines. And so we just saw that defensive line dominate against the Chargers, who frankly have much, much better tackles than the Chiefs. That means Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, they're going to be in the backfield. They're going to be forcing Mahomes to use his legs, either get out of the pocket, pick up. I'm not interested in the yards really beyond this little 4-yard first quarter thing, because he's not like a Lamar or Josh Allen who's going to break a big play. He's trying to get out of the pocket, get 4 yards, get the first down. Or, like I said, knife up the middle so you avoid a sack and you get credited with the rush attempt. And Houston plays a lot of man-to-man. They allowed the 11th most rush yards to quarterbacks, in part because they had the second most sacks, and they force you to make those decisions. Just give me Mahomes to take off and extend some drives with at least 5 rush attempts.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And you're totally right. I did end up betting on a bunch of quarterback rushing props for that reason. It's like Madden at this point, right? Where you're like, if my quarterback can get me 5 yards on third down, you're screwed, because my drive is just going to keep going, and you're going to keep that defense on the field at the end of the season. And that's playoff football in a nutshell for sure. And just don't turn it over, man. I'd rather you scramble for 4 yards, live to fight another day, than try to get the full 12 or something and throw a pick and put us in bad spots. We can't come back from that. So yeah, it makes total sense there. There's zero reason for Mahomes to feel this pressure to force anything. There's just no reason to do it when his team knows they can control things. And that's just really bleeds right into my first pick here, which is Joe Mixon under 79.5 rush and receiving, which is just wild change from him being at nearly 80 yards rushing throughout the course of the season as well for his prop. But now you've got the Chiefs on the schedule. They're not messing around here. There's Nico and Joe Mixon, right? And then just everybody else at this point. I do think John Mechie's probably good for receptions. You can still get him at 2.5, and he's going to continue to be involved. But it's just, I wouldn't even really be going for the yards. I don't feel like they're going to be able to put drives together. But if you add the receiving to Mixon, I think that's a good look there. But really the rushing in and of itself, right? Last week looked really, really good. One of the main reasons, obviously, that this team is still alive, that Chargers zone defenses, it's soft, right? It's just like keep everything in front of us, and that's just allowed Joe Mixon to really continue drives and to sort of eat up the yardage that they were giving him. It was mostly like Houston taking what they gave him, and this week I don't know how they find that when they are dead last in rushing success rate on first and second down since week 9, basically the last half of the season and a little bit more. They're not there with it with that rush, and we know that's been the case, especially as they've lost receivers. Teams have been able to just fill that box up, man, with linebackers, and they're facing a ton of overcrowded boxes on the opposing side. You look at his yards per carry in that time frame, 3.4 yards per carry, only 1.9, not even 2 yards that he's getting before getting contact. And that's a huge issue, obviously. I mean, when you look at the leaders in the league, I think the Eagles are at like 3.6 yards before contact that they're getting. So that's helping Saquon obviously look as good as he has. And Mixon, as much of a bull as he is, man, like you just have 0 holes. There's really nothing there. He's actually gone under 60 rushing yards in 5 of the last 7 legit games, right? Like we all talk about week 18, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Nobody out there. And in week 16, he did just manage to sort of eke out 57 yards. That was on 14 rushes versus KC. So not really looking good for his yards per carry there either, as we know, just slightly over 4. But this is a situation now where Chris Jones fully healthy. This defensive line is going to just stuff you up the middle. They are in the top 5 in stuff rate as well, which is an awesome stat that you can now get on Next Gen, that they're getting guys in between the tackles. You're just not finding holes for them for that, like I said, stuff rate. And if you look at this Chiefs team just historically in the last couple of years, this is when things are just, they turn off the valve. There's just no water coming out for the other team at this point in the season. You look at the Miami and Baltimore games last year for them in the playoffs, nothing for anybody in either of those games. Obviously, Derrick Henry wasn't there, but we'll wait for that game to come when it does. And if you look at Mixon, actually just a couple of years ago in this exact matchup, 8 rushes, 19 rushing yards in that one as well. Obviously, slightly different squad, but either way, yeah, we like Mixon to continue to have troubles against the best rush defense, what we're calling now in the league.
Well, they're not that. I mean, you look at EPA and rush success rate, and the Chiefs aren't in the top 10. But I don't buy that. Like, I think eye test wise, I'm like, when they need to step up, they do. Like I've seen them completely shut down in big games, shut down the opposition's running game, and then like get trucked by the Panthers, because it's just like Mahomes and company are like lollygag and squeaking out games in the regular season. The defense does that too. And then when it's go time, yeah, like I'm betting on Chris Jones and company turning that water off. I think people don't get fooled by Mixon's 100 yards against the Chargers, which almost made the show last week, because the Chargers are just like they're happy to let you rack up some yards, and Chiefs ain't that. They're winning defense first, so like the look there. For second pick, I will go Sam Laporta over 48.5 receiving yards. Got him a nice number there at FanDuel, which has some good numbers all around here for the weekend. Look, I have respect on the outside for Washington's corners. Actually, now that they have Lattimore, now we have Mikey Sanders still, the hometown hero I talked about, who's actually quick enough to maybe stay with Amon-Ra on some plays. I'm not going to go ahead and call that under in any way, but he can guard him in the slot a little bit. Lattimore on JMO. And so the Lions are probably going to look on the interior a lot against a Washington defense that had the 3rd worst interior pass D, the 7th worst DVOA against tight ends. And I think more importantly, it's just like Laporta is still kind of deflated because he did almost nothing there in the first half of the season, hamstring injury in training camp. Then he sprains his shoulder in week 11, missed the game. Since then, he's gone over in 4 of his last 5 in terms of the receptions and the yards, 67 yards per game. He's up to 80% route participation after going about 60% in the first half before the shoulder injury, and only going to be healthier after now a week off. And in the playoffs last year, Goff loved to lean on him, especially against man defenses. He went 9 receptions on 12 targets per game in the division and NFC title game, 81 yards per game. Didn't do that much against the Rams, who played a little more zone, who couldn't stop the run. Now, I mean, that's your biggest concern. It's like Washington can't stop the run either, really. And that might be that might be how the Lions kind of pound the rock here. So there might be fewer opportunities, but Laporta, despite all the issues you talk about, he's still top 10 among tight ends in almost everything, and top 2, in fact, in explosive play rate. Because that's what the Lions do, right? Ben Johnson dials it up at the right time. you could get a 40-yard catch here for Laporta easily to help you just get over this with a couple receptions.
Yeah, it's better late than never for Laporta. And like you said, it's just so tied to health that why would you not just assume that you're going to get to come back to the same sort of level of player when he's fully healthy? And at that point, yeah, I think you're good to go. This should be a bit of a shootout as well. If I had to guess, like I do see points coming in this one with the way obviously that Detroit defense has been playing as well. So then you've got to get some points on the other side through the air. I do like that look there. I'm going to go through the air as well for a player on the other side of the ball there. Go to Eckler, over 23 and a half receiving yards in this one for him. This is just going to be a situation. I mean, I called the Chiefs the best run defense. I meant left in the league too, by the way, but obviously you do still have the Lions and the Ravens, more so the Ravens. Like, where are we at with the Lions at this point in their defense right now? You're going to shut things down through the ground much more easily for the Lions because that pass defense at this point is the vulnerability of it. And if there's that negative game script, as we expect this healthy Lions offense, as opposed to a completely banged up Bucks offense last week, right? Like, I think we think there's going to be a little bit more success for them leading to that negative game script. And even if there was somewhat of a neutral game script, Nate, I don't think either of us think that we're going to see B-Rob out there for more time than Eckler. If anything, the other way around, which is what we saw last week, the week before too, in a similar situation. He outsnapped B-Rob 60 to 40 in that one last week. Just got out snapped, slightly different situation. Once again, completely neutral, but it's against a defense that is a bit worse. Last week, anyway, the Bucks, right? That rush defense much worse. You can keep B-Rob on the field. This week with the Lions, it's just a complete opposite situation. So you're not going to see necessarily the same 47% snap rate for Eckler versus 51% for B-Rob. I think you see a lot less B-Rob, and that's really what this is predicated on. In addition to the fact that this Lions team is bad at limiting running backs, receptions, receiving yards, receptions, whatever you want to call it on the season. They are giving up the 7th most yards off that, and in terms of the yards per catch as well, 7.8 yards per route run, I should say, to the running back this season. So when he's running the routes, right? We know that he's been the dude who's in with a high route percentage and the participation for all that stuff, because when it is passing down situation, this dude has been out there. Now, there's been more B-Rob at times, but that was when Eckler was, I was looking at a couple of the games against teams that give up a lot to running backs because they play that man defense so much. And if you look at those situations too, Eckler was closer to 50% snap rate in those games, as well as obviously out there on the majority of third downs. And I do think they're going to be needing that to help them. I mean, having that dual threat of Austin Eckler coming out of the backfield, and then obviously Jaden Daniels' legs to carry them on third downs has been a big reason for the success for the Commanders on third down, whether it is through the air or on the ground. So yeah, this is just a tailor-made situation versus that Lions who never ever play zone, fewer than any other team in the league. So yeah, you should be able to see Dan Campbell's team get the opposing running back catching balls against them.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to keep everything underneath, you'd think, the Lions, and try to avoid the big play. And that means passes down to the running back in a negative game script. And that, I think, will mean under 5.5 receptions for Terry McLaurin, which I've got here for the last pick, who, actually the most ridiculous thing is all 500-yard games for Terry McLaurin, he has not had 6 catches this year. He is a total big play guy. He might get the 6 or 7 if he's not able to break big plays, or he might fall short of both the yardage and the receptions. But I'd rather fade the receptions and think that Aaron Glenn, smart guy, future head coach, he knows where Jaden Daniels wants to go deep. He will say, like, Zacchaeus and De'Ami Brown, maybe you beat us, but like, we're going to invest more resources to Terry McLaurin with those elite safeties that they have. That is one thing. They might not have great corners, but they do have those safeties. And Amik Robertson, 2 weeks after, basically, strapping on Justin Jefferson, holding him to 3 receptions. Sam Darnold probably missed him 3 more times, but that, he did a very good job. He was right there in his jersey. He probably will spend a lot of time on McLaurin, who doesn't have a good win rate at all against man. 27% is one of the worst there at a high volume guy versus a 50% against zone. You just mentioned Detroit is the heaviest man team in the league. He's actually 73rd in yards of separation per target against man. So not getting open. Daniels will sometimes just throw it up there and hope for the big play, like I said, and sometimes it hits. And Detroit does give up some big plays, but that's not going to help you with the volume of receptions. And
Reception.
his target rate overall is 23%. That's 44th. And Jaden Daniels is projected for 10 plus carries at minus 130. So, like, how often is he actually going to let this thing loose? Like, he's going to be running a lot. Again, we look at a
Yeah.
quarterback rushing prop, which you would love to see. You would love to take here with Jaden. I don't know if I trust the passing as much. And I certainly don't trust McLaurin, who just finished that game against Tampa Bay's like third string corners and looked great. And but what last seen before that in the right in a big regular season game, getting erased by AJ Terrell, has twice been bottled up by the Eagles. The Lions again might not have that personnel, but they have the coaching scheme, I think, to try to take away a guy who's been mostly balling down the field.
May I interest you in a sprinkle of maybe like a fifth of a unit on plus 660 for Terry McLaurin to go under 5.5 receptions and over 68.5 receiving yards, just based on that stat you just said. That's 6-1 for something he's done multiple times this season. I could see that being worth a sprinkle. We're coming down to the end of it, man. We got to find volume somehow. So that could be a fun play to have, but just take the under as the base. And if you wanted to add the over receiving to it to play around a little bit, that could be fun. But yeah, let's get to my final play here. Also a big fan of this look as well for David Montgomery unders in this game. Like, shout out Monty for being in this game at all after an MCL sprain, not total tear, but MCL sprain in his knee in week 15. This is like not much more than a month later that, you know, he obviously chose rehab instead of the surgery, but here we are, right? And like, there is still the ability to re-injure that thing. So you have to be careful. Now, like Dan Campbell and all the coach speak, and do what you will with coach speak, you know, he would mention that there will be a place for David Montgomery in the playoffs when he's available. And I mean, he's listed available. What does there will be a place for him mean, though? I don't totally know. It's certainly not going to be, you know, leading the first two drives as the lead back kind of stuff where he's getting, you know, 2, 3, 4, 6 carries on the first drive or two. I don't think we're going to be seeing that. So the usage should be way down. And to be honest, the usage was already kind of down for Monty as Gibbs. And that was kind of the projection from the beginning of the season, was that like, yeah, this is going to be a two-headed monster, but like Gibbs is going to continue to increase his usage and his participation, especially in the pass game. That's why we also like the under 65.5 rush and receiving, not just the rushing, because he is not really very active, let's say, in the pass game. 2.7 targets per game on the season with just 15% route participation there, which is 59th among running backs, because he's just like, clearly not a lead pass catcher for them. And like I said, the tide was already sort of turning. You started to see about a 60-40 split in favor of Gibbs over the course of the 5 weeks before Monty got injured, where he's basically had that 42% of the snaps on the season as well. So like, we just expect that this continues to move in the favor of Gibbs. You've got bad health on the side of Montgomery. You've got a very high receiving total for him at like 21.5 in a game that we expect to be relatively positive in terms of the game script for this team. So just don't re-injure your back if you do plan on using him again in the near future. You've got a 9.5 point spread here. You're probably facing the Eagles. Like, get ready for that one if you win this one.
Yeah. I mean, there's multiple game scripts where Monty is just getting like 9 carries inside the 10-yard line mostly. I mean,
Right.
maybe he has 2 touchdowns on 8 carries, but like
Right.
raw yardage, I'm not really buying it. Yeah, it seems like we're particularly sour on the receiving yards. If it is 20 right there, like I think you take it. And Washington, kind of like Kansas City, yeah. Like I mean, the advanced metrics are poor for them guarding against the run. And I thought about that last week when we took some Bucky stuff. But man, those guys fly around. Like Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu are elite, and they're very sure tacklers. Those linebackers, they're very well coached. So I don't necessarily see Monty being able to shrug people off and break a big run here, especially if he's not 100%. And I don't see him playing, more than like 30% of the 35% of snaps. So yeah, I think unders all around.
Yeah, or you just are, or he's just a complete decoy. Like it would not shock me if he saw 20% of the snaps, right? Like you put his ceiling at 30%, and you also put him in more short yardage down situations. Then yeah, he's not breaking open a 1st and 10. That's one of the better plays for him because obviously you can throw or pass equally. You're equally as likely to do that on 1st down for most teams. That gives you that element of surprise of, is it a pass? Is it a run? It doesn't matter. He's probably going to be in there mostly on those running downs, I would imagine, in those formations. So
Yeah.
you can
And we
bank on
got
that.
one more bonus pick here. Hollywood
Go ahead. Yeah.
Brown, 42.5 yards for the Chiefs. Don't really have any advanced numbers or numbers for the season to really go into it, other than the fact that he got 15 targets on 32 routes in week 16 and 17. And now he's had 2 weeks to work behind the scenes with Andy Reid and Mahomes. So like obviously they're going to try to feature him to a degree. So I think the number might be a little low given the fact that like Andy Reid off a bye works magic, and Hollywood Brown is a very talented guy who's now working with Mahomes and should be on the same page.
Yep. No, that's fair. I like that too. And I similarly was looking at John Mechie as well. It's up to 3.5 receptions now, or like really bad juice on the 2.5. But he had 8 targets last week. Deontay Johnson is no longer on the Texans. I don't know if you saw that this morning. Like, what a wild time. He's now back on the Ravens. He won't be playing with them in the playoffs, but they did get him back on their squad after he got released. So they don't even have Deontay Johnson anymore. But yeah, Mechie will be the second or third leading target guy here in this one. And I do think they're going to have more success through the air than through on the ground, as we kind of mentioned about Joe Mixon. But that's all the time we have for you in our week 20, we'll call it week 20 here in the NFL in the divisional round of the playoffs. So definitely best have some luck this weekend. Best of luck to everybody who's going to be playing those games, and then definitely want to make sure you are subscribed to that page because we also have another episode with the Sunday games here for you as well, in addition to these 2 Saturdays. So until we see you next, happy betting.